Hello and welcome to another edition of the Writer's Room. I am J.Ishiro Finney, author and alien in a human suit, and with us is our lovely host.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome.
Whoops. And we have an echo because not one Ishiro is enough. We need to have multiple.
Yes, it is.
Yes, I am Kat Rocha, editor-in-chief of 01 Publishing and the night editor. And with us tonight is our very special guest. Guest, will you sign in, please?
This is guest.
Just guest.
Password.
Password.
Well, I have to begin by saying this is John Stephen Walsh, not John Stephen Walsh. Someone knows who I'm talking about. It's not. Hi,
Yes,
this is John Stephen Walsh.
You need to get it correct. I understand this pain. I hate it when people call me Roca. So
yes. So this is something that we've been wanting to do for a while, and since the Writer's Room is really beginning to pick up an audience, oh geez, what happened? We had like 10 people viewing. Now it's dropped to 5. Was our intro that bad?
My voice, it's that Boston accent. It just like
it just scared everyone.
No, thanks.
I was going to ask you where you were from. So
we said Boston.
I was born right in Boston, and for the first few years of my life, I was in Dorchester, which is a part of Boston. Now, I left there as a kid, and to this day, people look at me like, oh my God, that accent. It's like once your childhood accent, it gets cemented and you're done. And people from Boston are like, oh my God, it's what an accent. So, I'm stuck. It's my cross to bear. See, you two sound like normal people to me. And I sound like someone who's doing like a bad Ben Affleck impression. Well, Ben Affleck is supposedly from Boston. He doesn't sound like he's from Boston. The Kennedys are from Boston. They don't sound like they're from Boston, but everyone thinks that's how people sound in Boston. So that's our curse.
I don't see it as a curse. I mean, we're from California. We sound like everything because all movies sound like Californians, but you actually sound like you're from like interesting places.
Oh boy, have I deluded you. So it's different. Yes, it's who I am. God bless.
Exactly.
No, Nicole Diaz, you showed up just right in time. We've just started the show, and what I was going to say is now that we've got a bit of a following with the Writer's Room, it's something we've been wanting to do for a while is alternate between the weekly roundtable talks with William and Buddy, and alternate with interviews of various authors currently publishing and get their take on the industry, their work, and their process to hopefully build this community bigger and make you aware of more people that are writing material that isn't woke.
Yes.
Because there are books out there worth reading.
Well, that's one of the things when people talk about writing a lot online, I don't know if you've noticed this, maybe I'm just paranoid, but seems like 9 out of 10 of them are talking about agents and publishers. I don't see a lot of them talking about the actual craft, and it's kind of backwards because if you want to get an agent or publisher, if you have a good book, they're going to jump on it. They don't say, well, I like this book, but who did he vote for? I mean, they'll find out later and then they'll be disillusioned, that you didn't vote for Hillary, but you know what I mean? If they see that there's good work there. We were talking about a certain editor. I won't say her name, but you know what I'm talking about, Ish?
Yeah.
And she's very PC in her real life. I've never seen any of that in the she edits. And that just seems to be like, isn't that the way it's supposed to be? But I guess no. You have to jump through these hoops. You have to be, you have to check the boxes. And that just is so alien to me. And I don't think I'm alone in that. And I don't think you two are alone in that. I really do think that that's a big chunk of the readership.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean,
okay, well, hey, it was fun. It was a good talking to you.
We haven't even talked about your work, but let's hear from our editor here.
What, from me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in terms of what do you really think that people? I don't mean the people buying the stuff. Do you really think there's that big of a readership that's like, oh, I love this guy's work, but he voted for him, so I'm done. Do you think that? I'm asking. I don't know the answer.
Unfortunately, there is a percentage of the population who will not give you the time of day unless you think the same way that they do. But hey, if that's the way they want to vet what they read, okay, that's fine. To each his own. For me, tell me a good story. I don't really care about your politics. Just tell me a good story and don't preach to me.
Also, I would point out that if you look at the numbers over the last, I don't know, 10 years, we went through this period in which sci-fi and horror and fantasy started getting more and more popular. And it's never been more popular than it is now. And interesting, at that same time was when social justice started invading and taking over everything.
Right.
So while it was becoming more popular, sales were plummeting lower and lower and lower. During Scalzi's reign at the SFWA, I mean,
Oy.
numbers for sci-fi books, especially Hugo winners, just tanked. And so there's your evidence right there.
Right.
The popularity should equate to huge sales, but yet what the readership wants isn't being written.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff is being supported by their friends. A lot of these crowd-funded projects, it's for and by the writers. A lot of them only get reviewed because people feel obligated to say, oh, well, this is an Afrofuturism book, and I liked the Black Panthers, so you better read this.
That's interesting, in particular, the Afrocentrism. Are you familiar with a writer named Samuel R. Delany?
Yeah.
He was writing science fiction. He doesn't write science fiction now. He writes very gay. It's about gay men, and particularly since I'd say around 1990. Back in the 60s and into the 70s, he wrote just science fiction. You can pick those books up today, and they read as well or better than any of the Afrocentrism science fiction that you see today. I mean, he was writing about jacking into spaceship controls 20 years before William Gibson.
Well, wasn't Bester another one that was doing that?
Bester was writing. Bester wrote great short stories, which hardly anyone reads anymore, but they should. But Star's My Destination and Demolished Man are.
I know that Bester was Gibson's huge influence.
Yeah, you can see it, and if you read those two books, I mean, that he was writing good stuff. You look at Alfred Bester, you read his work. I challenge you to tell me what his politics were. Because and ditto with Delany. Now, this is a black gay man writing science fiction in the 60s and into the 70s. You can't tell me what his politics are based on those books. And they're fantastic stories. And it just seems like they're not aware of what they're losing by doing what you just described. They don't get, maybe they just never lived in that type of a world where they didn't have to go through this process before they decided, hey, I like this, I want to read it. Oh, no, hold on a second. We got to figure out if this is the right guy to be reading. I mean, right person to be reading.
The right was Zer.
Yeah, the right Zer. Well, and that is the thing is, you said, well, maybe they're living in a different world. They are. They have the privilege of being able to pretend to be outraged at injustices that don't exist, when these authors that you were talking about were living in hard worlds. So
right. I mean, Delany was writing when he was literally living in a tenement, and he was hand to mouth, and he was writing the style of his books, like Einstein Intersection, for example, Nova. He wrote the first American science fiction novel with an Asian female lead. And guess what? Hardly anyone talked about that at the time. It's like, well, he did it. There you go. Wow, what a great book.
Well, I think the real example of how much things have changed and how much the current crowd at the Science Fiction Writers Association, for instance, they've essentially turned the organization into a lobbyist group for the left.
Right.
And it's no longer about stories or writing. It's about propaganda and social policy and forwarding an ideology. And they're constantly going on about how they needed to take over and fix the old boys club. The curse word is old white guy.
Right.
To this day, old dead white guy is their crusade is that they need to do away with old dead white guys who achieved things.
Well, which is so bizarre from a group that supposedly is pushing science fiction, because the whole idea of the genre is freedom, basically, when you get down to it.
An organization founded by a bunch of old dead white guys needs to be destroyed because of old dead white guys. I don't get
just
it.
like the NAACP, an organization founded by old white guys. I just find it bizarre, because you look at, if you want progressive reading, I can show you decades of science fiction that was, quote, progressive.
They weren't written now.
Before wokeness came, and guess what? The difference is that they were stories to entertain first. Philip K. Dick, Ursula Le Guin, those are damn entertaining stories that they wrote.
Well, to go further, though, supposedly these old dead white guys that need to be done away with and scrubbed from the canon for their crimes against humanity. What's interesting is you brought up Delaney.
Yes.
And I think the shining example of the SFWA, the Science Fiction Writers Association, back in its golden age, versus the woke activist version that we have now, that's multicultural and ideological to no end.
Right.
Is the story that Delaney won the Hugo. Have you heard that story?
I'm not sure. Or please tell it.
Delaney won the Hugo Award, and it was just a complete landslide. I mean, it was an overwhelming, everybody voted for it. They said, yes, this is the book. And when it came time to give out the awards, there was this very polite black gentleman in the back of the room that nobody had really much noticed. And nobody had met Delaney yet. And they called Delaney's name, and this black gentleman got up, accepted his award, and the room fell silent. And everyone just kind of looked at each other. And then everyone smiled and started clapping. Now, compare that to what we have now, where, there's vote rigging and people who, this person doesn't fit our agenda. They're not going to get the award even though they won. And book banning and needing to burn the canon and all that other crap they're pulling at the SFWA. I'd say really the old white guys had it right.
Well, it seems like they're all in on it. And by them, I mean the voters, the people it's like they know that it's BS. We're doing this because of reasons, as opposed to the quality of the piece we're voting on. And you, the people who see the winner of the X award is so-and-so, you know it too. So it's like a game everyone's playing at the same time. And it's like, so what was the best book this year? Well, that depends. Who wrote it? Who did? You know what I mean? It's like everyone's in on it, not just the audience, but
Neil
the voters.
Gaiman decided to step down so that some woman could win an award, and the book sucked.
How would you feel about an award that you knew you got because someone else stepped down?
Thank you.
So you'd get it. That's just...
well, I would call that the Woman Training Wheels Award.
That shit just disgusts me to no end. I absolutely abhor the idea of being applauded for being a singing dog. You don't applaud the singing dog because it sings well. You applaud it because it does it at all. And that's what those types of awards are. And I hate these gimmies based on gender or sexual preference or, race. It's bullshit. It should be on ability and talent.
They're explicitly saying you can't win this on your own.
Well, yeah.
It is.
Which is another reason Kat especially despises any of those women of anthologies.
Oh, yeah.
Women's Horror Month, Women Destroy Sci-Fi. What is it? Homos Destroy Sci-Fi, Trans Destroy... It's like, why bother?
Well, your gender or your sexual preference or your...
If that's the only reason we're buying the book, obviously it's not because of the story.
Well, it's not going to tell me if you write well. it just tells me something about you I really don't give a shit about.
Well, I remember in college in the 90s when they kept trying to reform the canon to make it woke. I was in San Francisco. I got a ton of this dumped on us. And the difference was is Gen X actually kind of laughed at it and made fun of it. We didn't really accept it like the millennials did. We got all this gay lit dumped on us. And really the lasting impression it gave us was gays couldn't write. I was like, really, is this what you wanted to communicate? I mean, this stuff's terrible.
You were in San Francisco. It was porn.
Actually, it was. It was all really explicit porn that was badly written. It was like, so what you've communicated to the class is if it's gay lit, it's terribly written porn. Is that what you're trying to tell us?
That you'd better read or else.
Yeah. I mean, it really wasn't the best face to be giving gay writers. I would tell you that. And same with women, female writers. The same thing. If you took the books that were being forced upon us, you would assume that every woman who write was a emotionally broken man hater.
Are you familiar with the Kurt Vonnegut story? It was made into a short film called Between Time and Timbuktu.
No.
I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. Every single person.
It's not Harrison Bergerac, is it?
Yes. Thank you very much. Now you know the story.
Oh yeah.
That story to me describes what Kat was just saying, which is we're going to help you by putting these weights on you. It's the opposite of what they claim they're doing. It's like they're saying, okay, well, you're going to write this science fiction for women story. It's like, whoa. I'm a woman. I'm just going to write a science fiction story. Oh, no, you're not. You're not. You are going to write this woman science fiction. Do you understand what I mean? It's like it's almost like they're trying to read it for the audience, and they're trying to assign the writer into a role. It's like they're getting between the writer and the audience. They insist on the audience is too stupid. They're going to get the wrong ideas from this. And you, the writer, you just do what we tell you to do because that's what you're good at. And it's no, that's all crumbling now.
How many bridges got burned because you refused to take part in any of those women anthologies? Or
all of them? And you're talking about writing for women. Unfortunately, that comes in two varieties, and both involve the word romance. So. I'm not kidding. You find anything where it's women's lit or something that's written for women, it inevitably devolves into a romance novel. And that's just sad, where if you just have somebody write a story, 99% of the time it's infinitely more entertaining and has no politics.
And yet the people who are most adamant about that stuff seem to be these shippers. Like they want to, it's like they want to like create these relationships and things. Like, whoa, it's just a story. That doesn't have a romance in it. Why? You understand what I mean? The audience is kind of contributing to that by piling on. I wrote a story years ago in which a woman had moved into an apartment building and she started to have these. I won't get to. Don't worry, I won't get beyond PG. She starts having these encounters in a dark room, and in the course of the story, you learn that she's not even sure who the person is, or even what gender they are. Okay, at the end of the story, it's revealed that it's a man. I sent this, and a woman editor contacted me, and she said she liked the story until I revealed that it was a man at the end. Would I consider changing it so it's the reader doesn't know what gender the person was at the end? And I said no, and she didn't buy the story. And that type of an ending could work with something else. It just wouldn't work with the story. You know what I'm trying to get across? Mm-hmm. They shoehorn that. It's like what you're talking about is a different story. It turns into a joke. It turns into one trick, like snap ending, like she never found out who it was. It's like, that's not what this character was dealing with.
Well, the thing is this editor was telling you this because when chicks read, and I'm saying chicks, not readers who are female,
not
but
women,
chicks.
chicks.
Right, exactly.
When chicks read, they need to have a character to map themselves on top of.
Right.
And so in this case, it was your main female protagonist. And if you don't know the gender of the person that she's been having encounters with, then the reader can map on whoever the hell they want. They can map on Fabio, or they can map on whatever female they may be lusting after, or, you know, etc.
Choose your own adventure.
Yes, it's a choose your own adventure. And that's the thing, is with everything that's aimed specifically at women, or at female readers, specifically chick readers, the main protagonist is always somebody they can map themselves on top of, or there's somebody they can map themselves on top of whose personality fits theirs. It's the smart one, sweet one, or the hoe mentality. And then the love interest is somebody they can pretend is who they want. That's also usually why there's two love interests, so you can have them fight over each other. But anyway.
And that's, and what you just described is funny, because doesn't that say a lot about how we say, oh, this character has now been introduced into Star Wars because now Asian girls have someone on the screen they can relate to. And I was always like, but isn't it you're supposed to relate to people who aren't like you? In other words, John, it's interesting if I can relate to an Asian woman on the screen. Why is it that when there's a white male character, that's whatever it is, can't an Asian girl relate to a white male character? Can't a white male relate to an Asian girl character?
I have been accused of relating to mostly villains from 80s cartoons, and those are almost always male. So I'm with you. It's for me, it's who you like the best, who has qualities that you like and possibly aspire to be. So
well, the fun one that I always like to throw out when those conversations come up, and it always pisses off whoever starts the thread on Twitter, is to say, well, I don't know about that, because as a 6-year-old, I related to a robot that turned into a jet. So
did you guys see the movie Annihilation?
No.
You didn't?
No.
It came out a couple of years ago. It was based on a series of books
by Vandermeer,
which I could not get through.
Yeah, that's actually why I didn't bother with it, is because I had noticed Vandermeer was really swinging towards the woke end, and I was like, I don't care.
Right.
But I do like the director who did that. I mean, he did.
Oh, yeah, I know. He's a good writer too.
Well, he did Dread and Ex Machina.
And he did, and he wrote the script for 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
And the thing.
So he made it a good story.
Annihilation here's the thing. He said very openly that he didn't really follow the book. He was writing the script as the books were coming out, and he just said, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do this.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll go see it then.
He's very open about it. But here's the thing about that. The whole movie has exactly 2 men in it who are minor characters. The 4 main characters are all women, and they touch on that exactly once in the entire movie. And this is how they do it. The women who are about to go into this zone, they're all scientists. And one of them says, do you notice something about us? And one of them says that we're all women. And the other one says, no, and then she gives the answer. In other words, that's the extent of it through the whole movie, that they touch on that.
So in a sense, it was a smack in the face to that percentage.
Exactly. And it's like, you want to talk about strong women, interesting women, women who aren't either what you described before. It's in that movie. It's like, in the first place, I love it. It's a fantastic movie. I think it's a great movie. And in the second place, it's like you sit back and like, why are we hearing about this Captain Marvel with all this in your face garbage, where this is just like, okay, these women are they're being, competent, they're being flawed, they're doing smart things, they're doing dumb things. And it's just, to me, it's just, they play out the feminism in the story. It's not layered like, we have to do this because. To me, it's a model. And guess what? It didn't do very well, and hardly anyone ever talks about it when they talk about, Captain Marvel and all that stuff.
True. Yeah. All right. So we are 25 minutes in. So I do want to get a little into your stuff before we get to the questions from the audience, because that's a big part of the show as well, is we really like to go through and do some feedback to the audience.
No questions about the prison years.
If that happens to be true, that's even better.
No.
Damn. Okay, that would have been fun.
I can make it true-ish if you want.
What was it like in the H block? Okay.
No, you said that. My immediate thought was the prisoner instead. So it's like, I'm not a number. Anyway.
I have that box set sitting over on the shelf waiting for me to rewatch it.
Awesome.
I have not touched the remake.
Good.
Have you guys checked
There's
out
been 2 remakes, and I've avoided both of them.
Yeah, no, the original for me. Thank you.
So
Patrick McGowan rules. Anyway, sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
So tell us about your work.
My work is in these mostly in the horror area, which you'd think I'd have a snappier answer than that, but I don't like most horror. I think most horror is garbage, and I try to write something in the vein of like horror in the Twilight Zone, which is you're using the genres to write about things that would look kind of dead if you wrote about them straight. My short stories that were in print magazines are in a book called Bloodstreams, which I left them as is. I didn't rewrite them at all because I wanted people to see, oh my God, if this guy could get published, then I've got a shot. It's not that I'm not proud of them. I think they're good stories, but hopefully, if you're any good, as you progress, you get a little better. And it's important to see that writers can improve as they go. I published a few of them separately as Kindle, as Kindle singles. And one of the most popular ones is called Mr. M, and it's about a boy and the weird old dude, Mr. M, the creepy guy down the street who nobody talks to and stays away from. And years later, when the boy comes back to attend a family funeral, Mr. M is still there. And I don't want to give away much more than that, but it was inspired by, in terms of how people get inspired, writers looking for ideas. I saw this series of photographs of a man in a suit, and it looked like he was dancing in the first 2 pictures. In the third, he's out of frame, and you can just see his shadow. So it's almost like he danced into another reality. So I only bring that up because I think that writers looking for ideas, one of the biggest wells for that is photography. And the internet is it's endless photography, like Pinterest, for example. So if you're ever looking for an idea, go to Pinterest and just kind of browse around, put in horror or put in weird or something and just kind of browse, or just look at like street photography. Because there are so many places for ideas. Music and photography are like the veins of gold. And the story that you might find interesting, it's called Bone Shoes, and it's about a boy living in like a village. This was years before, but it was a little like in the vein of The Witch. And he, in his little village there, you're presented with a pair of shoes made out of bones on a certain birthday, and you have to wear them all day. And it's what happens when he does this. It took a while to get a response. I sent it to a magazine, and it took a while to get a response from the editor. It's a magazine with fantasy stories for kids. And I was wondering, so I asked, and the editor sent along a note with a check and said she wasn't sure if it was too mature for the kids, especially because the ending is so downbeat. But she liked the writing so much that she was going to just go ahead and publish it. So you'd be surprised where you can actually make a sale, which is why I tell people just, if you think you can sell to the New Yorker, send it to the New Yorker. Don't be afraid. Just send it someplace that's going to pay you, because there are so many places online that expect you to give them something for free. And I think that's just a very bad mindset for beginning writers to get into, because it's like, hey, I got published. Yeah, well, okay, but somebody got your work for nothing.
Yeah, actually, one thing that's been concerning me with the writing market is the more and more that I look at it. I mean, back when I was shopping stuff around years, 3, 4 years ago, it was pretty decent. Rates were decent. There were plenty of opportunities. I'd have to say, aside from fanzines and stuff that doesn't pay anything, the well has really dried up from what I can see. The only anthologies, it's like, well, me and all my friends are in it. The end.
Right. The short market is tough now, as you say. It's like I mean, the last time I checked, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, which has been around for like 70 years, they have a readership of like 5,000 copies. I mean, for a national magazine that's been around for over half a decade, it's short stories. It seems to me are more about getting interest. It's not where you're going to go for a career.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Kindle has really revived the art of the short story, which has
Sure.
made me really happy.
Do you like the ones you read that are original
Oh, online?
on Kindle?
Oh, yeah, I love them.
You do.
And I wish there were more anthologies that I could go through with stories that I could sit down and read in a sitting.
Mhm.
And again, for a while there were a lot of those coming out that were of decent quality. We made a few ourselves. But yeah, I mean, the whole woke thing really has screwed everything up.
I that's why I asked you if you like them, because I've been opening a lot of these stories and shutting them after a page. I don't particularly care for the writing. I find a lot of bad writing in the Kindle originals, and I say this as someone who has put on Kindle.
Oh, the Kindle originals list?
No, I just kind of check, randomly, and I see that these people. Why do I keep saying let me turn it around. Do you like it? I mean, do you find a lot of good writing in Kindle on Kindle originals?
I used to.
Yeah.
I used to. I mean, again, the market's gotten very weird. I've found some stuff that I've been impressed with. Not as much as I should. I think the search algorithms have kind of gotten a little confusing.
That's it. You just touched it. It's how do people circulate that this is someone to read? Because it's man, it seems like it's just hard to find something. I mean, there's so much, but it's a giant mountain of stuff, and you're like, well, where do I begin? You know what I mean? It just seems like there's so much. I mean, I get people on Twitter who send me, oh, look out my book, and I'm like, oh my God, it's just very purple. It's very it doesn't seem like it comes from a place of people who read.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff you see published are people who have dreams of making a movie someday. But really, on another end of things, the thing that's really changed now from before is even less the algorithm and the community itself. Where do you go to find out about good material online?
That's a great question.
They're all gone.
I wish I knew the answer.
They used to exist. They're all gone.
That's why you answered the question.
That's one of the reasons we started this show, is we wanted to get talking about writing, and we wanted to interview people to introduce readers to new stuff.
Right.
The material's out there. I mean, there's Nick Cole. There's
Nick Cole. You read his writing, and you separate that from what you know about his situation in terms of the publishers and such, and you read it and you're like, this is just great genre writing. And to me, genre is not any kind of a B level. It's like, this is fantastic. I'm just enjoying this so much. And then you read about his story, and it's like, really, that's why a publisher, if folks who might not know the story, he wrote one line in a book that was a reference to abortion, and it wasn't some big pro-life, banner or anything. It was just kind of like, well, think about this. And based on that,
Pseudopod and the Escape Artist podcast used to be a wealth of great short stories that would lead to more, where you'd find out about a great writer, you'd go online and you'd look at their Amazon page. Of course, that got ran into the ground.
Right. Well,
And they're all kind of falling apart like that, which is one of the reasons this show exists.
well, I think it's great that you're, taking this step, and I don't say this to be, I'm not being overly dramatic. I'm honored that you wanted to include me in part of this, because the we haven't talked about it too much, because I think you guys do a fantastic job of verbalizing it in all your shows. But the woke stuff is deadly to creativity. It is
Oh, yeah.
deadly. It is. It isn't just this side little thing. Like, it's like, no, everybody should be. You shouldn't have to go into a book knowing that the Guardians have been there first and cleaned it up, so you don't find out certain things. That's and yet I look online, and there are people who embrace that. They want that. They don't want to be triggered. And it's like, if a book isn't for triggering you, what's it for?
Guess what? Those people also don't tend to buy anything.
That's where I come from. That's where I started with this. It's like, do people really? I mean, I just saw a thing where, like, the comic books are, like, the sales are, like, way down and such. It's like people have
And so
people
are
finally,
horror and sci-fi novels. They're plummeting.
and as you mentioned about the wokeness, it's like, so people are ready for this. They're ready for. I just want to read a book, and guess what? If there's something in it that challenges me, that's actually a good thing.
All right. So you asked, are there good books out there, good material, short story collections as well? Well, books that I've so far enjoyed, there's the Warp Marines series by C.J. Carella. I've already mentioned Nick Cole.
Mhm.
Let's see. I'm just going through it right now.
He's going through his library on his Kindle.
Well, see, I actually feel that it's kind of my job to go through and find stuff. So it's really cheesy pulp, but it's well written. The Neon Amazon by Eugene Kirk.
Someone contacted me on Twitter, and I sent him to a book, and he came back to me within a day. He had already read the book, and he loved it, and he had not seen anything like this before. He wanted to know more about this. You know what the book was?
What?
I Am Legend by Richard Matheson.
Jesus.
Oh God, he hadn't. Oh, that's sad. That's really sad.
It's sad, but at the same time, you go, yeah, but that's such a good book.
You know what? I couldn't finish that book, not because I thought it was bad. I thought it was one of the best things I had read.
Mm-hmm.
It was because it was so depressing, especially with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
When the dog disappeared, I'm like, okay, I can't continue this. I'm gonna start bawling, and I won't be able to stop.
I absolutely understand, but at the same time, isn't that what you want?
Oh yeah, well, Hell House not only is one of my all-time favorite books, it's my second favorite book of all time. There was a period there where I was reading it every single year, probably for about 7 years straight. And every time I would read it, I would get something new out of it, and it never stopped being scary.
Do you read Richard Matheson's short stories?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
He wrote a story called The Distributor. Did you ever read that one?
Oh, that sounds really familiar.
It's written in the short form of a diary or a journal, and it says it begins with a time to move, and the next entry is this man, the main character who you never really know about. He's moved into a suburban neighborhood. Sound familiar yet?
It does sound familiar.
And very casually, he just meets all the neighbors, and then this one, he says, "Oh, did you notice such and such at your next door neighbor? They did this," and it sets this pebble rolling, and those two start to have an interaction, and then it's like, "Oh, I thought I saw so and so over there," and so on. And by the end of the story, he has the entire neighborhood just killing each other, blowing each other up, arrested, and then the very last paragraph is he summarizes: so and so is in jail, so and so has left his wife, so and so has murdered so and so, and the last line is time to move. So the whole story is one of those ideas of, like, a guy. It's like, who is this guy working for? You don't know. Why is he doing this? You never find out. It's just the horror of one person, what they're capable of doing to this neighborhood. and you go away from that story and you go, how did this guy write this? And to me, that's what the key to Matheson is. It's like you look at I Am Legend and you're like, come up with this exact same story before him.
Because he's got a lot of inner darkness he's dealing with.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like he wrote The Shrinking Man. Did you ever see the movie The Incredible Shrinking Man?
Oh, I was a child.
Yeah, that's based on his book. And that what is that story about? It's about powerlessness. Now, written today, that would have to be worked into. It's about a minority who moves into a, you know what I mean? Like, and then that would link into The Shrinking. But it's like, no, he wrote about humans. He didn't write about types of humans. He wrote about humans.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if it was written today, it might be a fetish site.
Well, there is some of that in the book.
Be forced to eat her toe jam.
When he gets to a certain, when he gets to a certain height, he's attracted to a midget from the circus. So it deals with all that stuff.
Okay, so some other ones. I would say the spring into sci-fi anthologies from 2018 and 2019 are very good.
What are those? Their anthologies?
Yeah, spring into sci-fi, and we'll see if they can keep up the consistency and quality. But the aim is to bring story back. I don't know much about the publisher yet, but
what is the quality in that makes you think, oh, this isn't part of that wokeness stuff? Is it just that they're just straight stories and they don't have any of that in it, or what is it?
So far, what I've read of the anthologies, and I haven't finished either of them, it seemed more just about people more than anything. So yeah, they were actual sci-fi stories.
I say I want to introduce people to this concept they might know. It's called paperbacks.
Yeah.
One of the best things about Amazon is you can get all these old paperbacks very cheaply. Yeah. And I know some people, I don't mean you, I know some people aren't into that, but it's like, but there is, I mean, you read these old short stories by Philip K. Dick, Harlan Ellison.
Yeah.
I mean, Harlan Ellison was as liberal as you could get, but he would be damned if any editor would tell him he can't write about X, Y, or Z.
Well, by modern standards, he's a screaming conservative.
Well, I suppose, I guess.
But yeah, I know what you mean.
But
John C. Wright's work I've liked, especially his City of Corpses is kind of an interesting take on superheroes. I've come across this author named T.R. Napper, whose anthology Neon Leviathan was exceptionally well written. I do a lot of digging.
That's what you have to do, because if you go by what Amazon is going to suggest to you, you're going to buy copies of the same book, which unfortunately a lot of people seem to like. They like to read the same book over and over again.
I've also learned don't trust the back of the book description unless it's like an independent author, because they all read exactly the same. And sometimes they flat out lie about what's in the content. Sadly, I haven't had much time to actually sit down and read books for pleasure outside of work. So I do audiobooks and through Audible, which is owned by Amazon. And I've learned don't read the description and listen to the samples, and also change up what category you're looking in to confuse the algorithms, because if I stay in a category too long, it'll start throwing up woke shit at me over and over and over again. And I can't escape it. So I have to change what category I'm looking in order to get out of that and stay that way for at least a week.
Now you're Kat as an editor. What are you finding about writers now? Are they like, oh, thank God, someone who isn't woke? Or how are writers responding to the when you put out, hey, we're not looking for that woke stuff. We're just looking for good quality stories. What is the response you're getting?
Well, we haven't had an open call for a while now, but when we were doing them.
And the people who have been approaching me to edit their books, which I've been, very grateful for. I love talking to these people. They usually find me because of Adventures in Awful, so they know what I'm like. So I don't get woke problems. But before all this happened, I used to slush read for Pseudopod, and I would have people approach me. And it was all like 90% of what I was reading was all exactly the same stuff. It was all woke, and it was usually either flavor of the week, which poor trod upon person is now going to become an empowered being,
Something.
to fight the powers,
Right.
or it's going to be a chick who is empowered and her love interests, and always involved weird ass pronouns, and almost always was whatever the TV show or movie that was popular at that time,
Right.
but with this. So
you must get a lot of variations in the Matrix too.
Was getting those, was definitely getting the Matrix, was definitely getting it's Lord of the Rings, but Aragorn's a chick.
Just realized you just said you were reading Slush for Pseudopod. You probably rejected one of my stories. I'm out of here. Bye, guys. How dare you? How is that?
Well,
doing a Slush reader. Oh my God, that must have been like, well, you know what? I got to eat, so here's the next one I got to read.
She was doing it for volunteer.
Yeah, I was volunteering to do it. Honestly, because I wanted the prestige, because at that time that meant something.
Right.
And we were finding good people that way.
Yeah, and we were. It was a great way for me to headhunt for free. It was awesome.
You have to be very nimble today when it comes to publishing, because it has never changed so fast as it does now. I have seen just in the last few years, literally, it be like a great time for people looking for an agent, to being a terrible time to being looking for an agent, to being great. It's like, that's depending on publishing, depending on how well Kindle's doing. It's you have to be changing. That's why when you two did your show about your going forward, I was like, God bless them, because you know what, you're actually you're ahead of the wave, because you have to change. You can't just be stuck in this mindset. You have to be nimble. And as for writers, you have to be yourself. It's almost the opposite of that. If publishing, you have to be jumping all over. For a writer, you got to stick your feet in the ground and say, this is who I am. This is what I'm writing. And I just got to improve my craft and write good stories that I hope will be connecting to people. So then when you put on your, I have to find an agent or a publisher hat, you got to start dancing. It's two completely different, to me it is, at least, two completely different ways of thinking.
To be honest, do you think that writers need an agent or a publisher?
You have to make your decision. Am I going to try to be one of this tiny group of people who get published in, like Stephen King, who I think Stephen King is kind of like the worst thing to happen to some writers, because they think, I just got to write this and this and this will happen and then I'll be a zillionaire. And it's like, I think if you want to write your own stuff, you have to say, you know what, I'm just going to keep writing this stuff and I'm going to put it on Kindle, because then no one can mess with it. I think it's that big a deal, because finding an agent, I can tell you, is very, very hard unless you already have a connection, because these agents know professors, they know English teachers, they know college writing instructors, and they say, who do you got? Send them to me if you think they're good. In other words, they already have a reader outside of their office. I found it very difficult to find an agent, and then I dropped the agent. Right now I don't have one, and I think if it's for a very specific type of writing. And
well,
I think very commercial.
Yeah, at this point, the publishing houses are not really worth your time.
No.
I mean, really, they're not worth your time, and you're not going to get paid. And if you get paid, you're going to end up spending it all keeping yourself fed while you write them 3 novels, and you'll realize that the money they paid you will only last a year.
It's a very rare person who can make a living through a publisher. I see a lot of people who sell on Kindle who are making better livings than if they've gone the traditional route. That's what I mean about being nimble and about the times changing. It's you can do it, but I think you have to pick a genre and you have to stick to it and do the same thing over and over again. And if you want to make a ton of money, you can do it. I'm not saying you will. I'm saying you can. If you want to be a writer like me, who writes a horror story, and then he writes a crime story, and then he writes something that's got a high sexual content in it, but it's not porn, but it's a horror story. You have to decide, am I going to be working regular jobs? Like, I've worked in a homeless shelter. I've worked in a transitional home for kids who've been taken out of their homes by the government. I've worked in warehouses and retail. And through all of that, I wrote and wrote and wrote, and some of it got published and some of it didn't, but it's how I'm built. And I think people who are listening to this, who want to be writers, they have to be very honest with themselves. And if they think they are being honest with themselves, they have to be a lot more honest than that, because you have to decide the way you're going to go, and then you got to dedicate yourself to it. And that's why I mentioned to you earlier, I see people talking online about this stuff, and they talk about agents and publishing. It's like, I think you should be concentrating more on the craft, on being a good writer. Because guess what? At the end of the day, if you're like me and you end up in a hospital room and you've been told you have literally days to live, which was false, but that's what they told me, and you got to face yourself and decide, did I do the right thing? That's only you can answer that. Sorry, I went off on that weird tangent, but I think it means something.
No, that wasn't a tangent at all. I thought that was all very good. Actually, that brings to mind, I think it was Chris Fox talked very much in his books about, balancing life and writing. And how do you balance a life and writing, or how did you balance life and writing, especially when you did have to have a job outside of the typewriter or word processor?
The balance comes from your ability to think about the writing while not writing. For example, when you're you have to somehow be able to be completely present at your job, and there's a little man in the back of your head who's still working on the story that's in your mind. The one key to writing when you're in that is you write about what's on your mind. If you're going to work and you hate your boss, you should be writing a story about that, because that's how that stuff is gonna work its way out in your brain, because that's the vein that you're gonna dig at, which is sit down to write. What have you been thinking about today, yesterday, and the day before? What's really been on your mind? That's what you should be writing about. And so to get back to your very straightforward and smart question, it's you have to just decide, am I going to watch this movie, or am I going to write for an hour? Am I going to go out with my friends, or am I going to try to put some pages down? You're going to have to skip a lot of social engagements. You're going to have to miss out on a lot of fun stuff if you want to be a writer.
Not having any friends makes it easy.
It does. I've learned that lately, especially, but it's we joke about it. It's true though. Especially when you get older and people are more concentrating on the family they've got now and their wife or husband. You see what it cost you, and you have to decide if you're that dedicated. I see a lot of people who say they want to write. They're not that dedicated. They think it would be a fun life.
Well, one thing that I would like to bring up as far as the publisher agent versus self-publishing, here's the thing that I want everyone to take to heart. If you can go onto Kindle and you can publish books regularly, and you can cultivate an audience of roughly 5,000 people, you will make a better earning than you would with any major publishing, and it'll be more stable.
Absolutely.
You will see more of that money and be treated better than if you were to get a major publisher.
And you'll get it a lot sooner.
And you'll get paid up front.
That's a key thing. The publishers take a huge amount. Your agent takes an amount. And guess what? Not everybody is making $20 million a book like Stephen King.
That, and I'll be up front, a lot of these publishers and big media in general make it a practice of screwing people.
Yeah, I know it's hard for people to believe, but publishers aren't honest. I can hear the tears flowing right now, but they can do something called papering, which means if you have a problem with them, they have lawyers and they can just say, okay, take us to court. And then you're now have to literally take to court people who are paid to push that day in court further and further away. So you might, if you have an issue with them not paying you, maybe you'll get to court 5 years from now. But how much are you gonna have to spend to get to that point, and where's that money gonna come from?
Well, actually, one thing that might surprise people even more. I mean, this is really shocking.
Hold on, let me get. Okay, I'm sitting. Hit it.
Even more dishonest is Hollywood.
Get out of here.
If you think the publisher might screw you on the money, Hollywood.
You had me until Hollywood. Oh, come on. But they're on Twitter. They're on Instagram. They like me. They really care about me. What are you talking about? They were the movie I liked. Of course they're honest.
Get on the set as long as you decide that you don't want to be paid a couple $200, $300.
Or they lie to you just to see what happens.
Yeah.
It would surprise people not a bit to look at things like the case of Psycho, which was made from a book by Robert Bloch. It was made into a movie by Alfred Hitchcock. Everyone knows and loves this movie. Alfred Hitchcock bought that book under a different name, or had his people buy it under a different name, so that Robert Bloch thought he was just selling it to somebody. His agent, I should say, thought he was. And Robert Bloch got $500, and that's all he got out of the movie Psycho. $500 to the guy who wrote the book it was based on.
Yep.
I did hear about that.
There are countless stories like that. And they go today, and it's not upfront. They take stories, they film these stories, and then quietly settle with someone for very little later, and that doesn't get on the television, so you don't know it happened. But let's turn to be slightly more upbeat now that I've gotten dark. But
no, it's all the more reason to just forge your own path. Go
exactly.
Print or go yourself on Kindle. You can do
Kindle. This. You control it all, and that's worth countless dollars. You can. I mean, I do my own covers. No one's ever accused me of being a great artist, but I like my covers, and people seem to like them. Some people do, and I know the people who are reading that. That's who I want to read it. Those are the people I'm writing for, and they're getting the books. It sounds very simplistic, but you get to almost control. You get to control the audience. You're saying, well, these are the people that I want to read this book, so I'm going to aim it at these people.
Well, we've got roughly about 5 to 10 minutes before we wrap it up. We'd like to keep these about an hour each.
Sure.
So, is there anything you would like to finish up on, or should we try
just if you want to?
For you.
I just post things at John Stephen with a PH, johnstephenwalsh.wordpress.com, and then you can go to Amazon and look under John Stephen Walsh, and that's to just make a distinction between me and John Walsh, who everybody knows is on TV, which I'm cursed with his similar name. But you can just find some of my books are on there. There are more coming up. There are a couple of my crime novels there, as well as the horror stories and a collection called Bloodstreams. And I'm running a freebie on there. So if you go there, you can get a copy of the story Shelter for free. I think that's the one. I will check. But if you check out John Stephen Walsh at Amazon.com. And there should be something free up there.
Commissar Kronsky asks if you have a Twitter.
I do. It is. How do I find my Twitter? It's at JSWRITER, the number 6, number 5. So it's JS Writer 65. I'm at Twitter, and usually I'm yelling and screaming about politics, but I try to put some writing stuff in there.
So I have one more question before we sum up the night. What's your opinion on Guyver?
You're both sitting. I'm glad. Guyver is a word I have seen over and over again. I don't have any idea what Guyver is. None at all. I don't even know what you're talking about.
One of our regulars, Owen Lister, is a huge fan of Guyver. And,
What is it?
The Guyver, and
I mean, I'm honest. Honestly, I've seen that word a bazillion times, and it's like I'm going to see if I can figure out what this is without
not to be confused
searching
with
it.
MacGyver.
Right?
Yeah.
No, I
it's
understand.
not MacGyver.
I completely understand, but it's one of those things. It's like this lion dude or the tiger people. Who's the person that show, but the guy that was in jail with a tiger or something? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
It's like some show that's on. Somebody in your audience is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Say, "Oh my God, this guy's an idiot." It's I just try to pick these things up through osmosis. And Guyver, I'm like, I'm not searching it. I refuse to search that.
Okay, well, Guyver is an anime from the 80s and 90s
Really?
that was pretty much very, very much kind of the pinnacle of weird aliens invading. Guy gets some weird alien artifact, bizarre power armor, ultra violence, nudity.
This wasn't.
weird stuff.
Was this an American thing?
No, it's Japanese.
I have it. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I have this on disc somewhere.
You do?
I'm not kidding you. I actually have it on disc, and all this time I've been like, "What is that thing?" I have this.
Cool. Okay.
Actually, we've only seen one of them, but Owen keeps pushing us to review the series, so we're going to try and do that.
Oh my God, my mind is blown. You blew my mind in the last minute.
Well, we had somebody here say that they'd like you to come back, so we can definitely do that sometime.
Well, thank you so much both for having me. I hope I haven't bored your audience, but
Of
you
course
guys
not.
are. I got to say it again. I've said it 4 times now, but I'm here because of that Vagrant Queen review. That's you made a fan for life with that. So
Awesome.
thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it. And
Of course.
All right, well, hold on. I'm going to end the broadcast, and we'll talk a little bit after the show, and then...
Real quick, people are saying what you were referencing was Tiger King.
thank you, people. Yeah, you have no idea what it is. I just know it's a thing, and I'm like trying to absorb it. I want to figure it out without looking it up. That's it. They're right. Thank you, audience.
Oh, he's looking it up now.
Don't look it up. Don't look it up.
God.
Wait, just see if you can figure it out on your own.
Show. Okay, I know what you were talking about.
Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I want to
see. Actually, maybe we should bring you on our other show, The Editor and the Alien, because that's more of a free-willing, just whatever the hell the audience wants us to talk about.
I swear to God. I swear to God. Until 2 seconds ago, did he just say he wants to be on a show called The Editor and the Idiot? I'm like,
no.
The Editor and the Alien.
Out of here.
I hope I'm not an idiot.
No, but
I thought I was going to be the idiot.
So.
I thought I was supposed to be the idiot. I get it. No, sure. Anytime you like is.
Yeah, that show is pretty much we go on the air and whatever we feel like talking about or whatever. Usually the audience pushes us in a direction we go.
As opposed to this incredibly structured and straightforward thing we just did.
Okay, real quick. Endless Nocturne is asking if I'm going to rant at the end of the show. Do we have time for a rant or no?
Oh boy, do it,
John. Okay. Do it. What were you going to rant about earlier? I brought it up and you said that I can rant for hours on.
Which thing?
At lunch. I brought up something and you said you bring that up, I could rant for hours.
The Tiger King.
Yeah, the Tiger.
No. God. Okay. What? I'm trying to remember. What were we talking about?
I think it was actually Third Act Blue Balls. It was a story you'd read that you were like, my God, and you just lost it.
Oh, shoot. What was that?
Well, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, guys. No rant this episode, but tune in on Saturday when we will be reviewing Dirty Harry.
Yes.
And I promise a rant in that. So you will get your rant. In fact, I might have 2 to make up for it. So
I want to think it was something you tried to watch or something you read.
Yeah, something I read.
Before you end the show, the 2 of you have to answer a question, and you have 2 seconds each to answer the question. You ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
Best movie ending. Go.
Best movie ending.
First one that pops in your mind. Best movie ending.
Oh, Jesus. Well, I know this is probably a controversial answer, but I really enjoyed the ending of Inception.
Cat.
That's crickets. Okay.
Oh God,
Cat.
I'm trying to think.
Casablanca has an amazing ending.
Casablanca has an amazing ending. You know, it's just the first movie that's popping into my head. I'm
Yes,
not saying that
that's
it's
the point.
best.
Is just say the first one pops in. You can correct it later. But what's the
Blade.
first one? Blade.
Blade. The movie
Okay.
Blade with Wesley Snipes.
Yep, I remember it. I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember the ending though. But Inception, Inception, the ending was great. It was everything that came before it that I thought was fantastic, except it was about living in a series of computer games as opposed to dreams. The visualizations were very concrete as opposed to dreams.
Well,
that's just me. That's just me.
Inception's probably the closest we're going to get to an actual Neuromancer movie ever. Because watch the film and read Neuromancer. You swap cyberspace out for dreams and a few other plot points. It has almost beat for beat. It's a ripoff.
And the ending of Inception is like the version of, I told you about that story of mine where they wanted to make it vague, where the vagueness, it works like in Inception, it works perfect. It's exactly the ending it should have had. Blade, I'm still trying to remember the ending of Blade.
I have the ending of Blade is it's simple, but it's perfect, and that is just showing how the fight goes on. Even though Deacon was defeated, the Blade's battle continues.
It begins as it ends that began, right?
No, it ends in Moscow.
At another rave, right?
No, not at a rave. In a dark alley in the snow.
Wesley Snipes was perfect casting. Perfect casting.
Oh God, yeah, it was. Okay, I've got one that's got an even better ending. Elysium.
Really?
Yeah, I liked it because he doesn't get to go home. He doesn't get, basically he doesn't get what he wants. But at the end, he realizes that, and it's
he achieves his goal.
Well, he realizes that his self-sacrifice will give freedom to others, and he is okay with that. Where the entire time he's been like, no, get this thing off me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And it's him realizing that there's something bigger than him.
Right.
And that's why I really liked it.
The only problem I had with the Inception ending is I read the interview with the director. And what he had meant to communicate with that ending was, okay, yeah, so now all the resources are being shared with everyone, but how long is that going to last? Is it really going to fix anything? And that was not communicated.
No, it was not.
Right. It was socialized medicine that will save us all.
Whereas what he wanted to communicate was, is this really going to fix anything, or is it now just going to wreck everything?
Yeah.
Was what he wanted to communicate, and it didn't really achieve it.
I feel the art direction in that movie was fantastic.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
God, I'm trying to remember.
I know what it was.
What was it?
It was Ad Astra.
Ad Astra, yeah.
Oh my God, that was awful.
Go.
Okay.
You got your rant, everyone. Here it comes.
Okay, first off, Ad Astra should have been a good film. It had everything to be a good film.
Bits and pieces of awesomeness.
Well, it's not even terrible bits and pieces. If you look at it, don't think about it as a science fiction story. Think about it as a Greek tragedy. It is a man who has been compelled, who carries the burden of his father's legacy, who, in a sense, goes to hell to bring his father back, and his father doesn't want to come back. And it's his own struggle through that as he's dealing with the burden of his father and learning that he doesn't need to shoulder that burden anymore. It's a Greek tragedy. So if you look at it that way, you have a good story there. The problem is that it's not a story because things happen to Brad Pitt. He doesn't actually do anything. Events just happen to him. Especially on that space station with the fucking monkey. There's no reason for that scene. If you think about it as like the Iliad or especially the Odyssey, and you think about it as these guys on the ship needing to seek shelter on an island,
They're
and
drawn by the sirens.
Yeah, and the sirens, and all the oh shit, the people who are here are killed by this creature. We got to get off of it. If they had done it like that, that scene would have worked. But there was no reason for them to go to that space station. It just happened because, well, we need to have something happen here. And then they go to Mars, and well, things happen there. And then somebody just happens to help him get to the ship that he needs to go to Neptune. And then the people on that ship just happen to die.
It was a space going remake of Apocalypse Now.
But it made
coming across
sense.
Stuff. They keep coming across stuff.
Exactly. So yes, there was the making of something good and a good story. And while I was watching it, I was breaking it down and how beat for beat for beat it hit everything to make it a great Greek tragedy, especially when he goes and meets his father and his father says, I don't want to come back. This is where I belong. I want to stay in hell, basically. But again, things just fucking happen.
Keep going. This is a great rant. Absolutely. The movie had so much. It had so much good stuff in it.
Oh, it
just
did.
Was this mush that never baked.
Talk about the monkeys.
Oh God, no. I'll get to the monkey in a second. No, I saw it with my father and my father's closest friend, and his friend said, "Why the hell was Tommy Lee Jones and Donald Sutherland in this? They were wasted." There is no reason for them and their talents to play the roles that they did. They are so wooden and so wasted. They show up to say things and then they leave. There's no reason for talent that good to be in those roles. And I agree with that 100%. You see Donald Sutherland show up and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. He's going to be, the old man. He's going to be the guide for our hero as he's going on this journey. No, he came, he said his piece and he left. That's it. And, Tommy Lee Jones as Brad Pitt's father. Again, you've got these videos of him and his cult in space. It's like, this is great. Right. This is going to be awesome. And then
had that's done.
Yeah, it's like
they're all gone.
All gone, completely gone. It's what the fuck. And yes, Ishi's heard me rant plenty about the damn blue-faced baboon. That's the other thing. Why the fuck is it a blue-faced baboon? Why would anybody A, have one of those things in space, and B, why is it not locked up and drugged to fucking hell?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because someone at the studio said, look, Reese's monkeys just aren't going to be scary.
Why would you put a blue-faced baboon in space?
Because you want to know why? Because someone said they've never done that. So let's do it. That's the most
deadly animal in the wild.
Well, why
they should have had a tiger in there.
Yeah, it should have been a tiger.
and then it could have been like paddling after Brad Pitt in the no gravity. And then people would have died of laughing in the audience. That would have been amazing. Or it should have been a shark. And it was like in the water that was floating like a bubble through the station, and Brad Pitt's trying to get away from the sharks going after him, and the bubble is coming after him.
Well, I know I was laughing when they spaced the baboon. I mean,
yeah, that was great. That was the point where I'm like, am I going to sit through the rest of this stupid thing? And I did, because I'm a fool, and I want to get to the end. I want to see what they get to, because, like you said, Tommy Jones has this cult in space. We get there. Oh yeah, I blew those guys out years ago. Oh, so yeah.
Okay. So, and then he's just kind of subdued and quiet, and
then he decides at that minute he's going to kill himself. After it's like, well, wait a minute, you've been living all this time, and now that your son's here, you're offing yourself. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of wrote ourselves into a corner. We don't have a cow to kill.
Yeah.
That movie, I'm telling you, that movie was they got Interstellar. And they got Apocalypse Now and said, we're going to do this. He's going to be going up the river, but instead of the river, he's going to space. And as you know, Apocalypse Now was, of course, based on the Greek tragedy. They had, the sirens were the Playboy bunnies. That was how Apocalypse Now was designed, the screenplay structure.
Was the journalist was a fool?
And these guys decided that's what they're going to do. And I just sat there and I just thought, like, there was the chase on the the moon buggies. I'm like, this is interesting, but it's like, so they know these guys are out there and they can't just like watch for this. They don't. They know that their guys are going to be coming for them, and there are these rustlers out there on the moon, and they don't do anything about that. They just let them shoot our guys, and then they say, "Hey, we better throw some missiles out there to knock those guys off." It's just so dumb.
It's very dumb, extremely dumb.
Maybe that scene didn't bother you the way it did me, but it really bothered me. It's like, these guys are coming on the moon buggies. Why aren't you doing something about it until they get shot?
No, that scene was hilarious. I mean, and the thing is they were trying really hard to make it seem like this action-packed car chase.
Right.
But they looked like little Hot Wheels.
Bouncing. Bouncing up and down and little cars spinning out and everything. I'm like, oh, why am I here? Why am I watching this?
It's like, I'm watching toys. Somebody losing toys. This is not epic or engaging or riveting. It's just stupid. And nobody is going to make a moon buggy look like a race car. It was not.
Someone
epic.
Did.
No.
Actually, what would be good is to actually get the two of you reviewing Ad Astra.
Oh God.
For a movie night.
Yeah, and then half of it would be us sitting in silence, going, "Why are we ever going to watch movies? This movie hurt me. I wanted to punch this movie. I didn't want to punch a movie before.
I wanted to punch plenty of movies.
I don't know. When I had to sit through episode 1 in the theater, I felt like I was going to punch something.
How many times? If books insulted me the way movies did, I would have stopped reading about 30 years ago. It's like they're designed to say, "Go ahead, we dare you to watch this. Go ahead. We're going to do this stupid thing. Come on, you're going to still watch it, aren't you? I know you are."
There are some where, okay, with books, it's the rare book where I will continue to read it to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. I tend to do that more with movies because it's just an hour or two of my life. So, and oftentimes I'm just agape, like, I'm not actually watching this, right? Like, I forget the name of the film. I never remember the film, but the premise is that it's an evil cat.
Inside a cat, the uninvited.
Yeah, the uninvited.
It's a good cat, an evil cat that lives inside another cat.
Yes, and it's on a boat.
Why would that's like you sit there, it's like, okay, I can imagine someone thinking up an evil cat, but how do you get to this boat? You get to the boat because the producer had a boat. That's how.
Yes, exactly. It is the producer's boat, and they took it out about like 2 miles away from the shore.
That stupid looking thing, the cat coming out of the cat. It's just like, why don't you just make the cat turn into something? Why do you have to do that? Because someone saw Alien, that's why.
Yeah. So what if Jonesy was evil, or Jonesy had the chest burster in him?
I hate cats and I hate cat movies. There. I mean,
that darn cat.
I'm trying to imagine paying money to go see a movie in which a cat kills people. Who the hell is going to spend money to see that on a Friday night?
Probably if it was a double or triple feature at the drive-in, because they're all supposed to be necking at that point.
That's true.
Did the cats kill anybody in Pet Sematary?
In the book or the movie?
Movie.
The cats kill anyone? No, it didn't kill.
No,
anyone.
I don't think the cat did.
It walked around being yucky, and then it got killed. That's what happened. That's what it does. It comes back as gross after it's dead, and the hero or boring hero kind of ignores it until he decides to kill it. That's the cat's arc.
Of course, Stephen King seems to have a real hatred for cats.
I don't want to get into Stephen King. I get real dark when I talk about Stephen King, because I loved Stephen King like no one. When in school, everyone knew, oh, John's the guy who loves Stephen King. And then someone bought me It for Christmas, and at the end of that book, I'm like, I can't read another word of this. His voice was like, I can taste it. I was just like, oh my God. And that did it. It did it. it was like, oh my God, how many pages? And then at the end, I'm like, I'm done. I think he's brilliant. I think his short stories are fantastic. He does not come up with very original ideas. I'll put it that way. When you read him and then you read someone like Thomas Ligotti, have you ever read him, Thomas Ligotti?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you read early Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury wrote a story called The Jar. You read that and you tell me that anyone has done better than that, because that book, that story, there's nothing explicit. It's all implied, and it just blows your mind. Ray Bradbury's horror stories are just fantastic. They're but yeah, getting back to what your original point was, I think he likes cats. I think he had cats. But,
yeah.
That, and the other one, The Cat from Hell, is that it? The one where the cat goes in the guy's stomach and eats its way out.
Oh yeah.
They adapted that for, like, maybe it was a Creep Show 2 or something.
I know there was Cat's Eye, where the cat gets electrocuted.
Yeah, he does have a cat thing, I guess, but I don't want to talk about hats. I'm a dog person.
No, the only redeeming thing about Pet Sematary was Clancy Brown in Pet Sematary 2. Made it all worth it.
Yes, which was practically a remake, not a sequel. It was practically the same movie over again, and that was messed up. But the original book was so good, and it's just one of those things where the movie had to be much looser. It had to be much jazzier and, like, foggy and weird. They took it very straightforward, and it was so boring. Both versions are so boring.
All right, we better wrap this up because we only have so many hours a month on.
Oh, sorry about that.
No. Talking to you. This was fun. See, this is the best part, is when we get people off on weird tangents.
Tune in to hear John Walsh yelling about cats for an hour and a half. Oh yeah.
So tell everybody again where they can find you and your books.
You can find me at johnstephenwalsh.wordpress. Is that it? Yes, John Stephen Walsh with a PH .wordpress.com. And you can find my author store on Amazon. Just make sure you do John Stephen Walsh, not John Walsh.
And the links are in the description.
The links are in the description. Yes, sir. Yeah, let's see. Here we go. So and you can find me on Twitter and the thing is at JSWriter, the number 6, the number 5, at JSWriter65 on Twitter, and say hi, and I can direct you towards the Kindle if you need it, the Kindle stories, because there are individual stories as well as a couple novels we didn't talk about because I talk too much, as well as the book Bloodstreams, which is a collection of stories that were in magazines years ago that I like the stories, and I think you will like them too.
All right, guys.
Wonderful.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, and thank you again, John, for joining us.
Thank you very much.